Welcome to my channel, Marie's Country Life. Today I'm going to show you how we planted our fruit trees using the Ellen White way or the blueprint method of planting fruit trees. Here is our mini orchard. We have several fruit trees planted here. We have apples, pears, and a few nectarines, peaches, and persimmon. We planted all of them using the blueprint method of planting or the Ellen White way of planting. On its third year after planting the apple trees, they bore a few fruits. On the fifth year, the trees tripled or quadrupled their size. They produced more fruits. So per experience, we know that the Ellen White way of planting really works. It takes time and effort to do it, but it's worth it. Here are the materials and the ingredients that we're going to use in planting fruit trees using the blueprint method or the Ellen White way. We need compost, which is a combination of leaf mold or leaf mulch, topsoil, peat moss, and this is optional, animal manure. We will also need 20 pounds of soft rock phosphate, and if it's not available, we can use 1 pound of 0.450 commercial phosphate. For dry areas of 20 inches or less annual rainfall, you would need 4 cups of gypsum mixed into your compost. For wet areas of over 20 inches or more rainfall per year, you would need 4 cups of dolomite fertilizer to mix into your compost. You would also need a 1-foot diameter size rock and medium and smaller size rocks, a 27-inch pipe, and a tin can to put around the base of the tree. And of course, you would need a tree to plant. Ellen White also advises putting 250 to 500 live earthworms in the top compost layer. It can be optional, especially if the leaf mold you use are more decomposed and have active earthworms in it. Another highly recommended amendment is adding 1/2 cup of kelp meal into the top compost layer. Or as an option, you can also use 1 quart ocean water or 1/2 ounce of sea solids or unrefined sea salt. If pest is a problem in your area, it is recommended to use 2 feet by 4.5 feet gopher wire to protect the tree roots. Now I'm going to show you in step-by-step how my family planted our fruit trees using the blueprint method or the Ellen White way of planting. There were a few things that we modified out of convenience and because we thought it was beneficial. We're going to plant a fruit tree using the blueprint, the Ellen White way.
And we're digging the hole.
Yeah.
And that's using our muscles.
Gonna use our muscles. To prepare the hole for planting a fruit tree using the Ellen White way or the blueprint, it has to be 3 feet wide, 3 feet deep. The first layer of the soil, as you dig into the dirt, as you notice that the topsoil is darker, so about 1 foot. Don't waste the topsoil because the topsoil you're gonna use it. So this is what we do for the first layer. Whatever we dig, we put here in the pile because we're gonna use the topsoil as we fill the hole. And whatever rocks you find, make sure that you collect them because you're gonna use the rocks. So this is where we're getting our topsoil. This is actually where our compost is. You see, some of the food are still in whole pieces, but this is where a perfect spot for topsoil. Okay, for leaf mulch, you go into the woods and you find partially rotten or decaying leaves. And these are the ones that you want to find and collect. Just like these. Leaf mold is great for the soil. Leaf mold is formed from decaying leaves and produces an invaluable soil conditioner. The presence of the beneficial microorganism, including earthworms, is great for the soil to provide nutrients for the tree.
The leaves, to make it easy, like if you know you're going to plant some trees, say the next year, you can rake leaves from your yard, throw them into the woods, into a big pile, then you'll have a lot of leaf mulch or leaf mold to be able to use for tree planting.
For the next year.
For the next year.
Is that okay, bud? Here is a diagram that I've made on planting trees by the blueprint or the Ellen White method of planting. The numbers are according to the layers of materials put in the hole. Following these steps will ensure great results in planting fruit trees and even vegetables like tomatoes and peppers. It is best to have your soil tested before planting fruit trees or vegetables so you know what your soil needs. You can also add other soil amendments in addition to the basic requirement recommended by the blueprint. Here are some diagrams on how you can use a planting board, especially if you have multiple trees to plant. The planting board set the trees in line after the field has been staked out. This board is 4 feet long with a hole at each end and a notch in the middle. You can use this board as a guide as to where the tree's center should be by placing stakes on both ends and one in the center, showing where the center will be. Remove the board and dig a hole. You can even use the board and the stakes to keep the tree in place as you plant the tree into the hole, especially if you're planting the trees by yourself.
So this is the hole that you need to dig for planting the Ellen White way. Something that is, I know this says 34 there. If you go over here, it's 36. Over here,
Basically,
it's like 38.
3
Here's
feet.
36. So it's because there's a slope. That's why I just did approximate. This hole is 36. 36. So 3 feet deep, 3 feet across in a circular. I recommend circular instead of square because you have less dirt to dig. You will start appreciating the depth when you're digging and you get to past 2 feet. It gets pretty hard. I actually have a jackhammer with a shovel bit and it made this a lot easier to dig. It still took about 2.5 hours to dig it though. So this is a pipe, just a piece of regular black pipe. Put a big rock on each end so that it keeps, when we start putting dirt in, it keeps dirt out of the pipe. The reason for the pipe is so that there's an air cavity underneath at the base of the tree. So in the bottom of the hole here we have a 4-inch diameter black pipe. You could use if you had a tile pipe, whatever, as long as it's 4-inch. I would not use PVC because it's more expensive. This black pipe is cheap and that's why we use it. It needs to go from one side of the hole to the other. The orientation doesn't really matter, just stick it in the hole. But you do need to be able to put a big rock at each end to keep dirt out when you start filling the hole in.
Okay. Before you fill the hole in with amendments, make random holes or grooves on the inside part of the dirt wall. You can do this by pounding a mattock using the pointed pick. The random hole openings will help the roots penetrate through the dirt clay easier. To prepare the compost mixture, you can either mix them all at once or make small batches as you plant. But if you have multiple trees to plant, it is more practical to have the amendments mixed together in a big pile. Or you can use a mixer to mix them all, especially the compost, topsoil, manure, peat moss, leaf mold, and the soft phosphate rock. And if you make smaller batches, just make sure that you have the ingredients divided out and mixed in each load you prepare. When we did our trees, we did a compost mix in smaller loads using a wheelbarrow. In our compost mixture, we added a few other soil amendments to boost our soil's nutrient level. Aside from the basic requirement of the Ellen White way of planting, we also added calcitic lime, sulfate of potash, kelp meal, and dried molasses because these nutrients and minerals are what the soil laboratory result shows that our soil needs to boost our soil's nutrient levels, which greatly helps our plants grow healthier and stronger. After the pipe and the rocks, this is the first layer, which is the combination of mixed compost of leaves, peat moss, topsoil, and all the amendments. And then after that, you make sure that you level and pack it down. So this is the second load because the first load did not cover the pipe fully entirely. So make sure that when you put the first layer of mixed compost that it will cover the pipe and the rock, and then you pack it down. So this is the second one, the second load.
And then the third.
The third layer is the small rocks. we're gonna put the small rocks on top of the mixed compost.
So we have about 8 or 9 inches of the first layer on here. That's about what you want to start with. You could do up to a foot if you got lots of supplies. That's what we're going to do here.
How much is it on top of the pipe?
About 4 inches.
4 inches on top. The top
4 or 5 inches.
4 or 5 inches
And the pipe
above.
is 4 inches thick, so you know it's about 8 or 9 inches.
Next is small rocks. The small rocks is going to help with minerals because rocks have minerals. So you're gonna you spread out the rocks. Next layer is a foot of topsoil. That pile there is the topsoil from this hole. The first few inches or a foot of the soil. So we just put it in there because that's topsoil.
Foot of topsoil. I know.
And after you put the topsoil, pack it. Pack the soil. Now make sure that you have enough topsoil. It's gonna be 1.5 feet or 2 feet. Make sure that you pack it down. And more packing. So you have to be generous. It doesn't have to be just 1 foot of topsoil. If you need 2 feet of topsoil, because after this you're gonna put the rock where the root ball is going to sit. A large rock will help provide a solid base for the tree to sit on and would prevent it from sinking down. It will also help the roots to spread out so they can get the nutrients they need. So for filling the hole, you would actually need several compost mixture, which is the topsoil, the peat moss, and we also added several or a few amendments. Because our soil needs amendments, we added dried molasses, calcitic lime, and sulfate of potash, and of course the basic recommendation of the blueprint is the rock phosphate. And for you to be able to fill the entire 3x3 hole, you would need several mixture of this compost, peat moss, topsoil, and the amendments.
You probably need 6 or 7 wheelbarrow loads of topsoil per hole.
6 or 7 wheelbarrow loads of mixture per hole.
But you can get some of that from your hole when you dig it, if you save it. Loads from that.
Probably get 2 wheelbarrow load from the hole that you just dug. After placing the large rock in the middle, add a thin layer of compost, enough to cover the rock.
You can take your tree and stick it on top of the rock to see how it looks at the soil level. You can see this pot on the upper side, it's below ground level, and over here the pot is above, which is fine. It's not a problem because it doesn't stay completely solid like this. You'll want to spread the roots out when you take it out of the pot. So it should be about the right level. Then you raise up your rock a little bit and reposition it.
That hump in the middle, that's where the rock is.
We need to find the bigger roots of the tree, so we're going to slice down the middle of the pot of the tree. Open up the roots because they're root bound right now from being in the pot.
An easy way to spread or loosen a root ball is to soak it in water for a few minutes and slowly separate the end roots. Be careful not to overdo it though, so it doesn't stress the plant. Otherwise, just loosen the end part of the roots without soaking it to find the biggest root, and make sure that the biggest root faces the direction where the strong and bad weather usually comes from. In our case, it's the north side.
You might be able to feel inside for where there's a big root.
Yeah,
so there's a big root here. So I'm going to put the big root to the north.
The big root should be facing north. And the reason for that is?
At least in Tennessee, North America, most of the bad weather comes from the north.
What tree are we planting?
Pear.
This is a pear tree.
And I love pears.
Before you put more compost around the tree, consider putting a gopher wire around the root ball if you have pest problems in your area. About 2 feet and 4.5 feet around the tree. Make sure that there is about 5 to 6 inches of gopher wire sticking out above the soil. Fortunately, in our area, we don't have gopher and mold problems, so we did not feel the need to put gopher wires around our trees. We just added the remaining compost mixture to cover and keep the tree in the middle. So somebody needs to hold the tree so it does not move. And again, make sure that the biggest root is facing the north side, because the north side, that's where the storm and all the weather. And the biggest root is going to protect and hold the tree up. It keeps the tree standing if it's facing the north.
Continuing the layer.
Yeah, we're continuing the layer, putting more mulch mixture with peat moss and the soil amendments and the topsoil. There's another load to put around the small tree. This is the last load of the mixed compost. So this is the third wheelbarrow full of compost mixture after we put the tree. Make sure that you put more and fill the hole, because once you put water on it, it's going to get packed even more.
Sink down.
It will sink down. And make sure you pack it. Pack, pack, pack.
This is a can. We just took off both ends, cut it down the middle with metal snips. We're going to stick this around the base of the tree to protect it from creatures like a mouse. Bend it around. Make sure you wear gloves when you're doing this so you don't poke yourself.
As an option, you can use a 1 to 2 feet plastic corrugated pipe to put around the tree. Once the tree is big enough, you can remove the can or the corrugated pipe.
Once the tree gets bigger, then you'll have to take off the can, then it's not needed, because the bark gets harder when the tree gets bigger.
After putting the tin can around the tree, put about 1 inch or 2 of compost or topsoil. Well, specifically it says 1 inch compost. After spreading the 1 inch or 2 inches layer of compost, add 3 inches thick of leaf mold or leaf mulch. Make sure that you put thick enough of leaf mulch as it compresses or sinks down over time. Again, make sure that you have thick enough leaf mulch to cover the entire hole and even past the hole. The blueprint method, as shown in this diagram, has the leaf mulch covering past the 3 by 3 feet hole. This part is optional, but if you want to do the extra step, it is recommended to put more leaf mulch, as over time this layer will decompose and sink down. On this layer is where you spread about 250 to 500 earthworms. Earthworms help break down the organic matter in the soil. In planting trees by the blueprint, it suggests to put rock mulch on top of the leaf mulch. To most of us, this step may not be necessary, but per further research, rock mulch actually has several benefits. Rocks help protect the roots from pesky pests digging and eating the roots of the tree. Rocks will serve as an insulator during hot and cold seasons, as rocks absorb heat and cold, so it helps preserve soil moisture longer. Rocks also prevent grass from growing, especially if you put thick enough layer.
You can also talk to a tree company, and maybe you can get some ground up trees and branches and leaves, and you can put that around your tree as well, as an alternate to the rocks.
Adding rock mulch on top of the leaf mulch is optional, but it is beneficial. As an alternative, you can just use regular wood chips as mulch on top of the leaf mulch layer. Most of our fruit trees don't have rock mulch, but we know it is useful for the trees. The last step after planting and mulching is watering the tree.
By using 10 gallons of water. You can use the pots that the tree came in, it has holes in it, makes a good watering thing. You can pour the water in so it doesn't move your freshly applied materials.
After planting the tree, water it with 10 gallons of water. Do it every 2 days for at least 2 weeks. If you have a drip irrigation system, make sure you set the timer accordingly so the tree will get adequate amount of water. Creating a berm or a raised rim of dirt around the tree is another optional step, but it is highly recommended by the blueprint method. It helps hold water and fertilizer. As you can see on the picture, this is what we did to this pear tree. The blueprint method of planting is a rather thorough way of planting, but we can attest to its effectiveness because of our experience. It takes time and effort, but it's worth it. When we planted our fruit trees, my in-laws helped us too, so it was a blessing. We planted our fruit trees in 2012. It's now 2021, and our fruit trees are growing. They are now 9 years old. They're doing great. The tree trunks are as big as 30 inches circumference, and most of them have fruits, especially the apples and pears. The science behind the blueprint method of planting is divine and God-inspired. When Ellen White received an inspiration and the instructions on how to better plant fruit trees successfully, she knew it would work. She shared with others the knowledge she received. The blueprint method of planting may be a daunting task to some, but let's think of the benefits that it gives to the tree as it grows. With all the materials and the amendments that we put into the whole, provide not only nourishment to the trees, but most importantly, the fruits they provide will give nourishment to our body as we eat them. And the digging part? Yeah, it's tiring, but hey, it's a great exercise. Having a motorized digging tool will be a great help for sure, so make use of it if you have one. What are you gonna say about planting the Ellen White way or the blueprint?
It's a lot of work. Really, it really is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. When we planted our fruit trees 9 years ago, it was a lot of work when we first moved here. But 3 years after that, we got some fruits from our fruit trees, especially the apples. And yes, it's a lot of work. And we'd like to say that this method really works.
And even though it is a lot of work, it's worth doing it. Like one orchard that's where we got our trees, they said, oh, so you're putting a pot in the ground. Yeah, it's kind of like a pot. Topsoil, fertilizer, and leaf mold and rocks, it makes the tree grow faster. And the evidence is behind us in these big trees that are only 9 years old. Some are about this diameter,
Big.
which is about
Big
between
trunk.
8 and 10 inches of diameter.
And there are things that you need to consider before planting the Ellen White way or the blueprint. You have to consider the timing. Some people like, what's the standard? The standard is you're supposed to plant your trees when the plants are resting, like in wintertime or fall season or early spring, just before the trees are blooming or the trees are back to life. But we did ours, the first plants or first trees that we planted, we did it in February, and obviously that was still winter time. And this time, I mean, it's late spring. As you can see, there's a lot of leaves already, but it's still springtime. And it makes it a lot easier when you plant it when there's not a lot of leaves and it's not hot, either in fall time or early spring or winter time.
I prefer the winter time.
He prefers the winter time. And this is actually, I think, the first one that we did that it's in late spring because it's still late spring. Okay, and make sure that you have all the ingredients that you need, like what we've shown you as we did the process, that we added some amendments because our soil, that's what we needed, because we did the soil testing and it shows that our soil lacks molasses, the dried molasses, and what else? The
Calcitic lime,
rock
phosphate.
and rock phosphate. Well, the rock phosphate is actually part of the blueprint, and it's the sulfate potash. That's what we need. So we added 3 more. And one thing that we've done is added also the kelp meal, which is basically the source of iodine. What else you can say? Now we're gonna wait 2 or 3 years from now And after we planted this, we're gonna keep watering. And obviously we have drip irrigation here, so we need to add another tape or another line so that it will get water on a regular basis. The first week, we have to water the plant every 2 days with 10 gallons of water. And that's it. It works. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Han. He did a lot of work. I did a lot of work too, but he did most of it.
Goodbye.